I'm Brandon Miller, and you are listening to Coach. This weekly series dives deep into the world of Clifton strengths and how they impact your daily life. Hear from certified strengths coaches on the ins and outs, quirks, and characteristics of all 34 strengths and 4 domains and how they play out in real life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Season 2 of the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach. I am here today with Adriane Massey, certified strengths coach since 2014. We go way back to the beginning. Adriane, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Brandon. Great to see you.
Yeah, you as well. So for those of you who don't know, this is our take 2. So we get to come back twice. I've had to do this now a couple times, but I find that the second round is just that much sweeter. So here we go. We're going to re-record. We're both learning. Podcasting is such a fun thing because you pick up nuances and things along the way, and the medium is growing so much. So thank you for being a great sport, coming back a second time and helping us out.
My pleasure.
Strengthzone.com is where you can find Adriane. She works with corporations, federal agencies, nonprofits. Adriane, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about just what you're up to and the great work that you're doing?
Sure, be happy to. So, I've been having a blast with working with companies, organizations in developing a strengths-based culture in their workplace. And, since 2014, it never gets old. In fact, the content just continues to ebb and flow with different trends in the workplace, trends in the environment, and just what's happening with people. So, been having a blast working across different industries, coaching leaders, especially at the senior director and VP level and above, on how to really use this thing called strengths to really build high capacity teams and, most importantly, well developed managers and leaders.
Isn't it just the truth that organizations, in terms of their responsibility to develop leaders, future leaders, seems to be an area where strengths has such power to create pathways that otherwise, I find that they miss, because when you use the default mode of development, you end up with a way that doesn't quite inspire people to step into roles of leadership. In fact, some are deterred from it. So we're missing out on these amazing people, this potential that's often sitting right inside of your bullpen. It's already here, but the right mindset, the right conditions can really bring it up.
That's so true, Brandon. I like to say that with the strengths-based work that we do, we help leaders oftentimes find talent hiding in plain sight. It's right there, right in front of them all along. And so to use the brilliant tool of Gallup Strengths, the Clifton Strengths assessment, and to pair that with the challenges and goals and hurdles that leaders are having, and to really show them how to see their team members through the lens of their strengths instead of in perhaps some different manner or a box that they've always seen them in, is such a gem. It's really like a gift. And it's been amazing to see some of the really eye-opening experiences that leaders can have once they learn to look at their people through the lens of their talents. That's been amazing.
Awesome. Spoken like a true pro, Adriane. And if you're listening today, I want to remind you, strengthzone.com. And if that was impressive, just wait till you hear us talk about the strength of intellection. So this strength is one that I find such depth. I think that's a good word for this one. Depth, wisdom, insight. And Adriane, you are the guide today for this strength. Where does it show up in your top strengths?
Right. So intellection is my number 4 in my top 5. It's surrounded by achiever, maximizer, analytical, and deliberative. And I really like my intellection strength. I must say it's a bit of a tie between intellection and maximizer when I think about what are my favorite strengths. And I certainly enjoy it in other people as well.
I love that. So if you were taking us by the hand today and you're going to walk us down the path of, let me introduce you to my friend Intellection and all about this strength and what we can learn, where would you start in that process of you were helping someone maybe who does know strengths, so a little bit advanced, but also someone who's coming in saying, that one sits really low. I don't really have a firm grasp of intellection. How would you describe this one for us?
Sure thing. I would say, what does intellection maybe look like? It might look like the person you're interacting with is not fully paying attention to what you're talking about. They might look like they're a bit aloof, even. And that might be because you're actually not on a topic that's of true interest to them. Or it could be because they're just in a really deep thinking mode. They're in such the depths of thinking that it looks like they're not even present with you. So that's what it might look like. What does intellection sound like? Well, it's not really the most talkative person in the room, but it could be if the topic is one of interest to them. So people who have the talent intellection tend to really go deep with the topics of interest and knowledge to them. And so that might be, 5 or 6 topics instead of 20 different topics in a more shallow way. But there is a depth to the knowledge, the interest, the energy around their favorite topics. And so, what does it sound like? It doesn't really sound all that talkative unless it's probably one of those core subjects that they have very deep knowledge about. And, what does it act like? Oh, I would say it may be a person that you know that could go the entire weekend without actually speaking to another person and be perfectly fine with that. I call that they really enjoy spending time alone with their thoughts. And it's not to be taken as offensive or dismissive. It just really is their true Zen space of thinking deeply. It's a strategic thinking talent. And at its best, it thinks alone, solo, and in a very deep manner.
So for our listeners today, hearing how Adrienne just took us on the tour of intellection, you received 4D version of how to think about this strength. And I wanted to add a nuance here because my experience with intellection is true. They often are not the one who is sharing a lot. But what I've learned is when they do share, it is wise to listen to them because there's something well formed, well thought through. Not that I haven't heard intellection talk out ideas at formation, but as formation moves through the stages of development and arrives at the pondering still, but yet some conclusions and some opportunity for application, I've seen that come through with this particular strength.
Yeah, absolutely. To really make an impact in meetings or conversations and problem solving doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the continuously talking person in the room. I'd say that a lot of impact players who have intellection as a talent are more known for being profound when they do speak. And that's not a lofty thing. It's just really that, as you mentioned, their thoughts have been really well formulated, often well researched. In fact, rarely are they just winging it. They really are coming from a place of strategic thinking and research and gathering knowledge and information before actually speaking out loud.
As a coach, so one who leads with strong intellection, how does that show up for you? This is our coach to coach season, and we're talking about how this strength from the mature side, the developed side. Now I'm leveraging this, knowing how I show up with this specific to your coaching work. Can you share that with us today?
Sure. I'm really glad you asked this question because I've had a chance to reflect on that myself. And early in my career, my very first career was I was a journalist and I worked for a newspaper, a major top 10 newspaper in the country. And I bring that up because one of the things that I always did as a reporter was I was required to ask a lot of questions. And I think that people who have intellection actually naturally take an interest in people, in the subject. So if we, use the root of the word INT, it would be about being interesting. It would be about being intelligent, asking intelligent questions that will have some meaning. It would be about, really the intellectual rigor that goes into a great coaching session. And what I mean by that is, in a coaching session, we're really there to serve the agenda of our client. And one of the best ways to do that is to really be interested and be listening a lot more than talking as you're guiding your client, your coachee, through the coaching session. And all the while having the benefit of their Clifton strengths handy to really baseline with this beautiful positive language, ways that they most likely naturally think and feel and behave. So I find that intellection has over the years supported me well as a coach because I'm coming from a place of being inquisitive and interested and doing a lot more listening than talking, quite frankly, just being a better listener than telling people what to do.
Do you find that because you mentioned earlier about well thought, well read, well researched, would you say that intellection is one of the strengths that a coach would use to really prepare well in advance of the session? Who is this person? What have I learned about them? Where have we been? Because I imagine that gathering all of that data with that interest, with that introspection. Okay, what is it that I'm reflecting here, and how do I maximize or meet their agenda to take them where they're trying to go?
You're absolutely spot on with that. That with intellection as a coach, you would find yourself more naturally wanting to know, who am I speaking with today? What are the talents around their intellection? What is their background? What is their challenge that I'm helping them with today? And how can I really support them? So naturally, the more informed you are about the person you're coaching, the higher the probability that you're going to have a successful coaching session, meaning it can really end with the person being coached having a great grasp of, what are my next steps? What are my key takeaways? What have I learned about myself or other people in the situation of the challenge today? And so, with intellection as a coach, I would say there tends to be another degree of readiness for the coaching session. Not that all coaches don't come ready. I think there's just another gear to it, per se, when you have intellection as something that just comes naturally for you.
That's great. Thank you. Let's turn the tables. You're coaching a leader with high intellection, and now you're going to help them grow in this as a strength, identify it, as Gallup labels the naming, claiming, aiming process, and moving it toward where it's productive, it's accomplishing what they're intending for it to accomplish. How do we move from this side where now you're the coach bringing out the best in a person with high intellection?
Right. So, being on the other side, the flip side of the coin, when I'm coaching someone with intellection, those coaching sessions tend to be very much a conversation. It's really and it tends to be a very fast paced type of conversation, as in they're mind is kind of firing off at on all cylinders at once. And so they very much are into wanting to have a conversation that captures the essence of what they want to discuss. So people who are being coached really expect the coach to be able to synthesize very quickly and accurately the topic or the challenge that they want to focus on for that day, for that coaching session. So I find that, of course, is energizing. An intellection coach and an intellection coachee can be, very rewarding because of just the speed of the piece of the ideas and the ability to synthesize a lot of complex information at once and to really feed that back in a matter of, this is what I hear you saying. Am I getting that right? And so I think that really is a plus plus. It's usually a win-win when both the coachee and the coach share that talent.
Do you find with those who have high intellection, if they're not yet all the way there to embrace this strength? This is one that I've heard coaches in the past talk about. They have to move past a little bit of resistance sometimes to get to, okay, yes, I see that. I see that that's me. I see that that's where I'm at. How have you found helpful ways to give people insight into the strength of this strength, where they can see it in themselves? They can go, oh, maybe this edge wasn't me, but I see it here, 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 and here.
Well, a couple of thoughts about how to really mature people with their intellection, talent, and to go to another INT word. One of the common things that I see or hear is someone will say, well, Adrienne, I'm just an introvert. And they kind of lean on that as sometimes a reason or an excuse for, not being able to fit into networking sessions or meet people or want to, move about the earth. And so a lot of times I try to help them reframe what that behavior is by saying, well, perhaps that's your intellection talent at work. And because you're fine one on one when you're talking about things of interest to you. And so I try to reframe that perhaps in being an introvert or introversion is actually your intellection shining through. And that's something to embrace instead of use as an excuse for many things that you just don't really want to do.
I have found in coaching people with high intellection, that is often a connection point for them, the intellection with introversion, and how there's a natural energy draw out when they're with people, but a energy refuel, recharge with alone time, and how important that alone time is, that musing, contemplation, the picture of by the fire with the book is like the happy place of a high intellection with no one around. Just give me that space and time to allow the thinking to move. Have you seen similar with some of your intellection folks or even yourself?
I sure have. I think that I see that in myself and I see that in others that the intellection talent does have a need to recharge alone and solo and doesn't need a lot of chatter around. So, how you recharge, introversion versus extroversion, there's certainly some direct ties with that in the intellection talent. In the same way we know that people with the talent woo like to recharge by being around as many people as possible. So, how we recharge is something to definitely pay attention to and to be self aware about.
So, friends, today, as Adrienne and I are talking about the strength of intellection, if you want to learn more about her work, strengthzone.com is the place where you can go and see what she's up to. Also, I know you can find her on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in learning about some of her coaching or her work or questions about strengths, I can tell you that she is one of the global experts on the topic of Clifton Strengths, and someone you could very much gain some insights and clarity and wisdom from. Adriane, I'd love to hear about a coaching success story. You're coaching someone. It could be recent, could be time past, but just whether it's your intellection coming through or their intellection or both, where you just found we did it. We got the connection. We got to where you were going as a way for our listeners now to connect it to a story.
Sure. A story that comes to mind where a leader was very successful in really, I would say, deploying people with the intellection talent and with similar strategic thinking talents. Is I was working with a senior leader who had been charged by the CEO to create a plan without divulging the details of the plan, to create a plan that involved a lot of strategy, a very strategy based situation. And, the leader was kind of scratching his head to say, gosh, how am I going to get this done with the people I have? I think it's really a stretch and we don't have a lot of time to get this done, this task done. And so what I coach the leader to do is to take the data of the entire company, not just his team, not just his department, and actually go digging for gold per se, meaning let's extract the people in the organization who have specifically the strategic thinking talents of intellection and strategic thinking and context, all of them. Let's extract the people who are pretty top heavy per se in those particular talents. And let's put together a tiger team. Organizations call it different things, but tiger team is one of the common phrases used. And he did just that. And he said, wow, I never would have put these 7 people together. And that's just the benefit of using a strengths-based approach to building a high-performing team when you need to accelerate a project that's heavily strategically based. Because we know that when strategic people are in the same room together, it's like iron sharpening iron. And so with that, we were really able to see this leader in probably half the amount of time put together a very specialized team, stand it up, stand it down. They got to the task. They were energized by each other. And that leader did come back and report that, TSW, this stuff works. Strength works. And, there it is. And for that, it really
Possibly
became
insert other S word, but yes, this.
possibly. But, it was just such a rewarding thing to know that the leader could see, oh, this is how I use this as a deployment strategy and not just a one-off workshop or a one-off coaching session. Let's really put this to use in our organization.
I love it. Adriane, thank you so much and for bringing to us such depth, insight, wisdom. I love this strength. I appreciate your willingness to share that with us. We are the final episode of season 2. And so you're with me as we're going to tee up season 3. And that's going to be coming out shortly after you hear this episode. You're going to hear season 3. And Adriane, we're going to be talking about secrets of the strengths. We're going to actually have 2 coaches on who share the same strength in their top 5. And we're going to talk about how those strengths show up different based on the other ones around it. And we're going to get into more of the dynamics of how those talent themes rub up against each other and create unique versions of each of the 34 talent themes.
Sounds amazing. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. If you are interested in learning more about strengths, please reach out to Brandon at 34strong.com. We have a resource just for you that we're happy to send to give you more insight, understanding, wisdom on the strengths. If you'd like to reach out to Adriane, you can find her at strengthszone.com, and she would be happy to connect, share her learning, or talk to you about a situation where you might want to work with high-performing leaders and teams. With that, everyone, we'll see you next season on the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach.
Thank you for tuning in to the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach. Please feel free to reach out to Brandon to partner with 34 Strong for collaboration opportunities to serve your employees or clients together. If you are a strengths coach, lead a strengths-based team, or are a fan of strength, we invite you to receive our complimentary resource, How to Be a Good Teammate to Me, Understanding My Contributions and Needs. Email Brandon_Miller at 34strong.com to connect, and he will gladly share this resource that will continue to unlock the power of strength.